in my mind, in my envisioning of how people will come out with comments like that is when they know too much. When they know too much, they have opened all the doors. They have opened all the windows. Okay, but maybe there is one door or window they have missed. They have not opened it. And somebody who has a completely out of the world view of this whole thing, the 90% of the Armenians who don't have any belongings, those guys realize that one door that was not opened, that was not tested, and then go and test it. They test it and they see something behind it. And then they are encouraged, they participate. Okay, so we need to develop the ground. You know, we have to develop the ground, and that's not an easy task. It is not an easy task.
Yes.
Levon will be the first one to say, because we've had this discussion many times in our meetings. This is a very tough situation, but how do we do it? And diaspora being strong, everybody says that. Pashinyan says that. Manatsakanyan says that. Everybody, our leadership here says that a strong diaspora is a strong Armenia, is a strong Artsakh. So we can get there. We just need that one little spark that starts it.
Welcome to Parev TV. Once again, we join you. Now, today we have two friends from California, and it all began with an email I received earlier this week that was headed HyeID, H-Y-E-I-D. I had never heard of that email address, so I checked it out. And sure enough, I was very impressed by a press release that came in 6 languages: Western Armenian, Eastern Armenian, English, French, Russian, Spanish, and I don't know if I'm missing any other language, but that was all that we had there. And it was a very impressive email, and I definitely wanted to check more about them and learn more about them. And it turned out that there is this work in California. Everything begins in California these days. We have 1 million plus Armenians there, very energetic community. And it all began with the idea of a Diaspora Armenian Parliament. What a noble title, what a noble dream. People call it a pipe dream. So I read more about this idea, and then I came with an HyeID, which is a novelty. I spoke to some friends about this idea, and they said, there we go again. That was the first reaction. And I would like to read some of the comments some people gave me. This is very ambitious pipe dream. This sounds like Harut Sasunian's vision for the past decade, if not more. This is a tall order with nebulous objectives. They want to do everything and be everywhere. And as you said in your email, elusive dream. Razmik, I spoke to you yesterday. What can you tell us about your elusive dream?
Well, it's nice to be able to have dreams, first of all. Dream of this quality and this magnitude obviously requires a lot of work. As correctly stated, this seed, at least that I'm aware of, was first planted roughly 10 years ago at University of Southern California when the conference of diaspora situation, you know, having to do with Armenians spread out everywhere. So there were some newspaper folks, there were some scientists, there were some social activists from all over the world, from Australia to England. They all gathered at USC. And it was headed by Harut Sasunian and his very good friend, and at that point in time, USC Armenian chair, Professor HyeID. So that is where everything, that was the spark. And then after a while, there were some attempts made by a gentleman by the name of Gais Minassian in France. He was, by the way, present at the USC at the conference. The attempt, did not completely come to fruition. Reason being, the approach was organizational, collective action and gathering. And when you talk about organizational forces coming together, there is already inherent taboos, inherent way of thinkings and approaches by the leadership of the organization, and makes it very difficult to come together. Mm-hmm. So what we have here as a completely different approach is we are talking about grassroots. Our call is to the entire people of Armenian descent and Armenian Hamacho, Armenians who, people who believe in Armenian issues and consider themselves as Armenians. These people come together, and these people are the grassroots, and that's where the movement begins. This is not a very easy task. It's a very difficult task. It requires a lot of stamina. It requires really the belief of the individuals,
One of the difficulties, even 10 years ago, was to access to masses, mass media. Diaspora is very complex, and to reach diaspora was a problem before. Today, it's not a problem. Technology comes, allows mass media, and I don't have to explain that to you. Right now, we're using this. One is available by technology. Second, we needed long-term financial backbone. When I say long-term, means long-term, because Pan-Armenian ideology and the projects that come from Pan-Armenian ideologies cannot be done in months and years, it's decades. And so all the past attempts either did not have the backbone, financial support, or if they did have, it was short-term. Third was a transparent, democratic election process. That's a very difficult thing to do. Even 10 years ago, although we had technologies, it was difficult to do, but not today. In our group, there are technologies, technologists, and some people from different walks of the way, which gives us the diversity needed to do this job. We have analyzed this for a long time. So, transparent, democratic election process, we have designed one. We like to share with you. Again, we use the latest technologies for that. So that individual that has a card is a registered member to vote. Very important parameter missing in the past. Fourth one, I'll discuss and say that's ego. Egos kill long-term projects, even if they are not dependent on any finances. The last root cause is the long-term individual commitment, which sort of fizzles out as we've seen. And that's very complex because we're all very complex people. That is also resolved by HyeID card. We don't want anybody to join for different political reasons because our organization is apolitical and it's nonprofit organization. These 5 root causes we have removed in our construct forward, and major part is using technologies of today and some new ones that will come in pretty soon and make this allowable. In short,
look, this idea, yes, it has been thrown around for some time, for some number of years. And I think the impulse for diasporan assembly, or the impulse for diasporan parliament, is natural. Given the conditions in which our diaspora was formed, I think there has always been an aspiration to take the scattered embers of our people and bring them together in one voice, or at least in a coordinated way. At the same time, I think the devil is really in the details. I think at a broad level, the idea of some coordinating group that would coordinate, say, the diaspora's voice vis-a-vis Armenia, or coordinate the diaspora's voice vis-a-vis diasporan issues, pan-diasporan issues. It's a natural one, but I think the devil is in the details. I think, first of all, as you folks have mentioned yourselves, the diaspora is an increasingly diverse and variegated entity. If 50 years ago we could talk about the diaspora speaking in one voice, or needing to overcome differences in order to speak as one voice, today the diaspora includes our traditional diaspora with the Pan-Armenian organizations, some of which we know very well, the hierarchical sees of the church, the AGBU, the political parties, and so forth. Today, I think we would all agree, the diaspora has become increasingly diverse, with professional organizations, compatriotic unions, groups dealing with healthcare, all sorts of groups that have adopted a more pragmatic or narrow bandwidth to play their role in Armenian affairs. It becomes harder and harder for me to imagine a way to embrace this diverse beast that the diaspora has become. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. The other point I would say is that when I say the devil's in the details, we also have to factor in Armenia and the Armenian government. A diasporan assembly doesn't require the permission of the Armenian government, but it sure would help to be able to coordinate this with official Yerevan. And we have an active, proactive diaspora ministry now. I don't know how they would look upon this when they have their own programs. I know that in past years, the Serge Sarkisian administration had actually given a kind of wink and a nod, green light, to creating a diasporan assembly, or a parliament including a voice from the diaspora. But I remember, this is now maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there were debates raging within the environment of the president's office about how to organize such a thing. I remember certain groups were advancing the idea of a parliament based on elected representatives from each community. And speaking for myself, since 1991, the established community in New York, New Jersey, and the East Coast, we've gotten along so much better since the Cold War ended, since the Soviet Union fell. A lot of the traditional schisms and divisions have melted away, or at least groups now learn to coordinate. I worry about some sort of electoral system where groups start competing with each other to be the top dog representing their community in an elected parliament. I view that as potentially a step backward. So these are some thoughts. Of course, I'm happy to hear your reactions to them, and I wish you success.
When you have money and funds in hand, and you have a good leader of the diaspora, all of these issues will be addressed. This is not a competition. All we're trying to do, we're trying to bring in the rest of the 90% who have not been active, and we want to give them voice. We have to pick their brains. Why not? Why not? And
the leadership that got together for a long time, we actually went to details. We went to how and the processes that has to take place. Paying attention to details is a necessity to be able to believe. Our organized part cannot be all the good organizations we have that do wonderful job, their agenda and their numbers and the intellectuals included in them are not going to pass 4 or 5%. Our target is the 95% who want to do something, who really have issues, all different from each other, and not one organization, not one person can actually represent them. So we think the leadership that we have put together comes from all walks of life. We are now friends talking the subject for over 3 years, approaching 4. And we have known each other now. We are mostly from Glendale and the Los Angeles vicinity at this time. And their names are in the press release right now.
Look, I think it's an ambitious idea. Far be it for me to pour cold water on it. I'm not a naysayer. I think we need to think out of the box and think about new ways of organizing our communities and new ways of organizing our community life.
Մենք կհավատանք, շատ դժվարին գործ է, մեզի համար պետք է, որ մեզի նման, եթե կարելի ասել, խենթեր,
Սրբազան խենթեր,
այո, միանան եւ մենք այս գործը իրականացնենք։ Բոլորի քաչալերանքը մեզի համար մեծ իմաստ ունի եւ ամեն տեսակի քննարկումներ մենք բացեիպաս պատրաստ ենք ցեզի հետ ունենալ քննադատական կամ ոչ ամեն մեկ քննարկումից բամը մարդ կսովորի եւ ադիգա արդեն առաջատում դիմության եւ զարգացման միջոց է
We want to offer a structure in order to have the ability to generate an Armenian Diaspora Armenian parliament. That's our objective. To achieve that goal, which is very, very difficult, we need people who are in a diaspora to read about this, our press release and contact us, ask us questions, how are we going to do this, be involved, and we like to tell them how we can do that. We can tell them the details of how we can do that, and I suggest we do more Zooms from different areas. We like to organize, just like you did, and I thank you for this, from different parts of the world. From the diaspora in Europe, many different communities from Zooms, we're from England, from Russia, from Krasnodar, from CIS countries, from Middle East, from China, from Japan. There are Armenians Armenian communities in more than 100 countries. We like to have Zooms like that. And we sure love questions, how we can do that and their involvement. And we will try to answer all the questions that we know how to. And if you don't, then we'll take action to get back and give you the answers that we have to come up with. But I wouldn't say it's an impossibility anymore. It's a dream that can be realized. We just need to have the diaspora to get involved.
Following, I mean, the initiative is commendable, albeit ambitious. And when I say ambitious, I don't mean impossible, but certainly an initiative like this needs to develop traction and it needs to develop critical mass. So for something like this, where we're dealing with a messy and diverse reality, that is diaspora, perhaps, I mean, a friendly suggestion, a good starting point would be to formulate a survey or questionnaire that can be presented to 2 different groups. One would be, potential partners, potential colleagues, that is leading organizations and opinion makers, to see how they feel about this idea and what they think the opportunities and obstacles are. And the second kind of survey would be a more broad sort of database kind of survey which is something widely circulated, if possible, to Armenian populations around the diaspora, to see how people identify as Armenians, to sort of gather up a database on who, what, when, where, and how do people feel about their Armenian belonging in diaspora. I think all of these things would serve as good building blocks for such an endeavor.
A simple model that I personally feel for the last 4 years. This concept, once implemented, is like a bulldozer. It will actually get a lot of people join us in a rate that the naysayers later on will also join us, because they actually believe that they want this to happen. They just don't believe it's possible. Mm-hmm. But once they see the bulldozer effect of this, which will happen in this implementation phase, I think everybody's going to join.
Vartan Yevantanik, I just wanted to extend our gratitude. Thank you for making this a possibility. Thank you for the exposure that through your media, through your friends, and your surroundings you introduce. On behalf of HyeID, the entire team, we are grateful and we thank you. We need your support, definitely, as we move along. But again, this has been a very interesting conversation, a two-way conversation in reality, which I certainly enjoyed it very much. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Polorit. Thank you, Antranik. Khosik Shudov.
Yeah.